There's more microbes in a teaspoon of soil than there is humans on the planet.
Soil is a very key thing to our life. We walk on it every single day. It is vital for us as a community, as researchers, as farmers, and as the general public to support the soil that we rely on and that we thrive on.
When you think about soil, a lot of times we talk about soil ecosystem services. So what is the soil doing? Recycling nutrients, sequestering carbon, they're minimizing greenhouse gas emissions, they're holding in water, and actually microbes are really at the center of all of those things.
One of my interests was astrobiology and looking for planets with other soil life on it, but I figured it was more important to focus on our home planet Earth and correcting the mistakes that we've made to these soil profiles.
Microbes are really complicated and they're really hard to study in the lab. What I'm really interested in is what the microbes are doing out in the field. And in order to do that, we have to actually get out in the field and sample soil. And a lot of times what we're doing is taking that soil and trying to freeze the microbes in whatever state they're in the fields.
My master's thesis looks towards a long-term field experiment, and the focus of this project is to see how more sustainable practices are going to impact a field in the long term, because this plot was established back in 1995. So I can determine how 25 years of sustainable agricultural practices change the soil microbial community, both for bacteria and fungal communities.
I think sometimes farmers talk about having the most microbes, so trying to get the biggest microbial population, and I think that's maybe less important than a really diverse microbial population. Part of it is understanding how different practices influence different microbes and promoting the ones that are good and trying to minimize the ones that are bad. And what we've seen is that tillage really differentiates the types of microbes that are growing. We're looking at the bacteria and the fungi, and we see that totally different fungi can grow when you have tillage in your system compared to no tillage.
Right now, I've been able to look specifically at the sequencing data from fungal and bacterial communities. Tillage, as well as a corn, soy, wheat rotation, have the most impact on how the community's structure changes.
Some of the bigger challenges with soil health is a change in the thinking of how things have always been done. There's a lot of people out there that are hesitant to change because we've always plowed, we've always done these different practices. Tillage is the equivalent of a tornado, a hurricane, and a fire all at the same time. It rips apart the soil and kills a lot of your biology. We've adapted our farming practices by moving completely out of primary tillage. We now no-till or minimum till or strip till.
Yeah, I think for every farm, there's different soil management practices that can work. We need to kind of take a toolbox approach where different management practices can be integrated, minimizing tillage as much as possible, increasing the number of crops that you grow, adding things like cover crops so that you don't have any bare soil on the ground.
The impact of crop rotation is that the root structures of the plants will promote different microbial life that are more geared towards that host plant itself.
So even if we're sampling in a corn plot, you can tell that there's different microbes there depending on the types of crops that were grown in previous years.
We grow corn, soybean, wheat rotation, utilize cover crops whenever possible. Those roots do a lot of the tillage action for us. It's some of the nicest seed beds I've ever planted.
Something that we've been thinking about a lot lately is using animals in the system. So using either pasture or manure and incorporating manure into the system so that you're taking those nutrients from an animal system and putting them back onto the soil and adding carbon and nutrients.
We aim to spread manure over the entire farm in rotation now instead of just the convenient farms. Manure is high in nutrients, so nitrogen, potash, phosphorus, so you get all different nutrients. Our yields are increasing, but also we're more consistent with our yields across our fields. It really surprised me how rapidly we did start to see changes in our soil. I would advise other farmers to start small, but start now.
What we're trying to do at the university is find ways that we can increase yields and increase production and also increase profitability while still protecting the environment. And I think if the general public understood the role that soil played in sustainable agricultural systems, they would want a healthy soil.
I hope that the next generation continue to study and realize the impacts of some of our practices and continue to push towards a more sustainable way to raise crops.